What is the real impact of armed conflict classification? Imagine trying to understand a complex puzzle without knowing what kind of picture it forms. That's similar to how classifying armed conflicts shapes the way international law applies. When a situation is labeled as an armed conflict, it unlocks a set of rules designed to protect those caught in the chaos. But not all conflicts are the same, and the classification makes a big difference. There are two main types of armed conflicts. The first is an international armed conflict, which happens when two or more states are involved in hostilities. Think of a war between countries. When this classification is made, the full Geneva Conventions of 1949 kick in. These treaties cover everything from the treatment of prisoners of war to the protection of civilians and civilian objects. They set clear standards for conduct, making sure everyone knows what is expected during warfare. The second type is a non-international armed conflict. This occurs within a single country, involving government forces and non-state armed groups, or between such groups. It's more like a civil war or insurgency. The protections here are less detailed, mainly covered by the Geneva Conventions, Common Article 3, and sometimes additional Protocol 2 if the parties have ratified it. These rules focus on humane treatment and minimum standards, but don't provide as many specifics as international conflicts do. The impact of this classification is significant. For one, it defines what legal protections civilians and combatants can expect. In international conflicts, protections are broader and more detailed, giving civilians stronger safeguards. In non-international conflicts, protections are still in place but are more limited, which can sometimes make enforcement harder. Another effect is on the obligations of the parties involved. When a conflict is classified as international, the rules requiring states to follow strict conduct standards, like distinguishing between civilians and combatants. In non-international conflicts, the rules are simpler but still demand humane treatment and respect for human rights. Legal accountability is also shaped by classification. Certain war crimes are only applicable in international conflicts, but many violations, like torture or targeting civilians, can be prosecuted regardless of the conflict type. However, the way courts interpret these violations can vary depending on the classification. Humanitarian organizations like the International Committee of the Red Cross relying heavily on classification to determine their role. If a conflict is classified as international, their access and protection efforts are guided by the full Geneva Conventions. For non-international conflicts, they operate under different legal provisions but still aim to protect civilians and detainees. Modern conflicts often blur these lines. Multiple actors, cross-border operations, and complex situations make classification tricky. Still, the law requires a clear label to apply the correct rules. Without proper classification, protections can become uncertain and accountability may weaken. Ultimately, the classification of armed conflict shapes the legal landscape. It influences how parties behave, how civilians are protected, and how violations are prosecuted. It's a fundamental step in ensuring that, even in war, some rules are followed to limit suffering and uphold human dignity.